Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at this cooler. This is the Fuma 2. Over here we have it set up on the test bench with the 4770K. Already ran the testing on it. Right now we're just sort of showing it off here for a showpiece really. But we have this really strange cooler that we're going to take a look at and really dive into if it's worth your money. So real quickly, let's go ahead and take a quick tour of this cooler. What's weird about it, and this may drive some people a little bit crazy, is we have two towers on this particular cooler, but they're not the same size towers. They're not twin towers. They're even offset so as to not interfere with RAM whatsoever. But we have sort of a thicker tower that I have set up towards the end of the motherboard, or rather the rear side of the motherboard. And then we have this slimmer tower up towards the front. We also have a slim 15mm thick fan. It's a 120mm fan overall. And then we have this normal size 120mm fan that's 25mm thick. But the mismatched fan, the slim tower allows you to have no real issues whatsoever with RAM compatibility. At least that's, I believe, what they're going for, and they seem to have achieved that just fine. So for some of the other physical features that are notable with this particular cooler, we have 6 nickel-plated copper heat pipes. We have a total height for this thing of 154.5 millimeters, so it is a little bit large in case you have a very slim tower. You may not be able to fit it in here. And from the very front of the slim fan to the very back of the rear tower, we do have a sort of a cooler width here of 131 millimeters. And if you're into compatibility issues, this cooler has a fantastic mounting system that's not only easy to mount, you can actually remove this entire cooler without unclipping the fans whatsoever, which is fantastic. But we do also get socket compatibility here. On the Intel side, going mainstream clear back to LGA 775, as well as featuring 2011 and those more modern high-end desktop platforms as well. And on the AMD side, we go clear back to the AM2 days or FM1 days. But something to be aware of, they don't list Threadripper as a compatible platform for this cooler. Now, just a couple more notes on the physical aspects of this. There are a couple of clips included in case you want to mount another 25mm thick fan to the back of this thing. And also worth noting is a very nice screwdriver with a magnetic tip is included for actually reaching down through the heatsink and unmounting this thing if you don't want to take the fans off whatsoever. And that's always a nice touch to add. Though at this point I have 3 of these things. I don't need them, but I'm very happy they're including, that is, Scythe is including these screwdrivers with some of their higher end coolers. Now for testing, we did use the exact same test bench that we've used in the past here for some of these other Scythe coolers, as well as the Arctic Freezer 34, and that's mostly just to keep everything identical, keep all the settings identical, so we can at least get somewhat of an apples to apples comparison. Now, it is worth noting that I do not have the temperature regulation in this room to make sure everything is perfectly equal, so take these results with a giant grain of salt, because frankly they're not scientific. They're just sort of giving you an idea of where this cooler stands. With all that being said, the CPU itself maxed out at 72 degrees Celsius, though the package averaged just over 71 degrees Celsius, so it was very stable. And I did accidentally let this test bench run a little bit longer than I anticipated when it was doing its testing. Normally I try to only go for 10 minutes for these air coolers just to keep it the same across the board. This one ran more for like 15 minutes, though the chart looked very stable, so I don't imagine the average deviated very much whatsoever in those extra 5 or so minutes that the test bench was running. Now, although this system is running on a 4770K, keep in mind it's running at 4.5 gigahertz on a fairly hot chip to begin with, and it's at 1.35 volts, which is definitely not the most efficient. I can run the CPU at 4.5 gigahertz, but because that's what I did all my other testing on, and also because it just gives us a little bit more heat to dump into the system, I'd be very confident putting this cooler on pretty much any modern AMD chip, and really a lot of the modern Intel chips, even things like the 9900K. But with the Intel side of things, just keep in mind, because their chips, especially the 9900K, are just so hot, I don't think you would get a huge overclock out of it. I'm sure you could get very close to 5 gigahertz, though your temperatures might suffer as a result of that. Now, these temperatures that I saw on the test bench were extremely average. They were normal, they were perfectly acceptable for really anything, but the real value of this cooler, at least for me, is how quiet this thing is. Take a listen of this cooler at full maximum load. This was in the sort of end of the stress test where it was just at its absolute loudest, which isn't really loud at all. And then also compared to the system being completely off, you'll notice there's really not much difference. This thing is an extremely quiet cooler. Take a listen. So all that said, I guess it's kind of conclusion time, and I'm sort of leaning on the idea of putting my money where my mouth is, or at least putting my cooler where my CPU is. And what I mean by that is I'm currently running an AIO on my Ryzen 1800X. Well, if you follow my channel, you know that in the not too distant future, I'm going to be upgrading that system, that main system that I use, to a 3900X, and I'm very seriously considering putting this cooler on that system, mostly because even though the AIO itself is pretty quiet, because the radiator is actually mounted at the front of my case, it's also then dumping warm air into the case because it's being used as an intake where my GPU is then feeding off of already warm air. And by using an air cooler like this, if I can get a decent overclock on the 3900X when it's installed and keep a very quiet system and also keep that clean air coming in the front, and knowing that because my case has an exhaust fan, all the air going through this heatsink is probably just getting exhausted right out the PC case anyways, I'm very seriously considering this because I don't feel like I'm going to get a louder system out of it. And if anything, my GPU temperatures might drop a few degrees because it's not just eating up all the warm air that's already gone through the AIO's radiator. So I'm very seriously considering this CPU cooler. I've been very happy with it. It's dead silent and it gives solid performance. So for that, Scythe, I think you have a winner with the Fuma 2. I give it a big thumbs up, and if you're interested in this cooler, by the way, since I didn't already mention this, I will go ahead and leave a link down below to the cooler in case you're interested in checking it out for yourself. But of course, I want to hear from you guys. Do you own this cooler or maybe even other coolers from Scythe? Let me know what you think about the company and their cooling solutions in those comments down below. And as always, if you like the video, give it a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things are very helpful to the channel. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. I'll leave it kind of down here, and I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.